Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 376 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to be talking about how exactly you can make sure that you do not outlive your retirement savings. And I think this is an applicable topic not just for the retiree, but also for those who are saving up for retirement, planning for retirement, and trying to know exactly what it's going to look like when they get to those ever-touted golden years. So stick around for a discussion of all those things and more in today's episode. Before we get started, though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to the show on a day-to-day basis. Now, in the world of financial planning, there is this one daunting task, and it looms over just about everyone. And so it's difficult to determine. It kind of happens on this person-by-person basis, exactly what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to look like, right? And that thing that looms is retirement, right? That thing that looms is the need to have money in retirement. That thing that looms is wondering exactly how you are going to finance everything that you do in retirement and beyond, right? And it's not an easy question to answer because it does differ on a person-by-person basis, right? But there are 100% things that we can all do that prepare us for the point where we are retired and where we make that transition from our working life to our retired life. Again, it's not easy. It's a difficult transition. Many people find this to be a very, very difficult transition, but we want to make sure that we are prepared as possible, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things that's missed when it comes to retirement planning is actually having a plan, actually knowing what you want to do when you're going to retire, actually knowing when you want to retire, actually knowing what your plan is for you and your money, and actually doing something about it in order to reach those goals. In our life, right? Anything that we want to reach, we set this goal and then we put these things in place, these steps, these actions that will get us to that ultimate goal, right? Retirement is one of those goals. Retirement is one of those things that so many people plan for, and especially plan for financially, right? And so these don't need to be pie in the sky type of things. These don't need to be, situations where you're just looking at this one particular age because there's this age that's been touted that everybody you know retires at, right? You need to have a plan as to what that looks like, right? Retirement is not an age. It is a financial number, right? I stole that from Dave Ramsey and Chris Hogan, but it is true, right? It is true that in order to retire, you need some amount in order to live your retirement dreams, right? Now, the question that I want to answer and the question that is posed in today's episode is how do I make sure I don't outlive my retirement savings? Now, this is one assuming that you actually have retirement savings, but I'm going to kind of walk you through this process because the process of not outliving what you have requires that you first have something, right? So this process begins before you even retire, and then it gets into the beginning of retirement, right? The beginning of retirement is kind of this weird transitional period, right? That you really need to pay attention to what's going on and work through some things, right? And then you can work into the totality of retirement and see what that actually looks like for you and for your family, for you and your spouse, whatever, right? So I've got many actionable things you can do, and this is an episode where you can take notes as you move along because this is going to be things that you can put into place. This is not, this is not theoretical. This is not me trying to say you should do this. You might want to think about this. No, these things are things that you can apply to your life even today. Because again, I'm starting way before retirement. So if you're 25 years old and you're saying, hey, if this is about retirement, I'm out, I'm not watching this episode, then you may need to pause, right? You may need to wait for just a second, because there are things that I'm going to tell you about how you can begin as early as your working life allows to make sure that you don't outlive what you have in retirement. So without further ado, let us jump right into what those things are. So before you retire, I have 6 specific things for you to do. I have 6 specific things that can make sure that you do not outlive your retirement savings that you must do before you retire. Now, this list is actually longer than the list of once you're at and in retirement, because most of what makes sure that you don't outlive what you have is the planning. That's why I'm saying it's so important. It's the planning portion. So the first thing is you need to work towards saving 15% of your income for your future each year, right? So if we just walk right down the financial action plan, what do I tell you to do? What do I give you in the financial action plan as an actionable step when it comes to investing your income? What I tell you, I go, okay, let's budget uniquely every month. Let's have a month's worth of household expenses and savings. Let's start getting our employer match if it's offered to us, and just get the match. Pay off all our consumer debt other than our mortgage. Save up 4 to 6 months of household expenses into an emergency fund. Then what do I tell you to do in part 6 of the financial action plan? I tell you to invest at least 15% of your income for your future, right? And it doesn't have to just be retirement accounts, but it has to be things that are going to grow and benefit you over a long period of time. And the reason that I say at least 15% is that for most people, saving 15% of your income over a long period of time can be extremely valuable, right? And obviously, as early as you can begin saving and investing, the better, right? Now, why 15%? According to Fidelity, most people will need at least 55% of their pre-retirement income to maintain their lifestyle once they are no longer in the workforce. After accounting for Social Security benefits, they found that 45% of the money needed for retirement will come from savings. Therefore, saving 15% each year starting from age 25 should allow you to hit that target by retirement age, which is 67. And obviously, you may have some more assumptions that are a bit more aggressive than what Fidelity makes there, but those are the facts. Now, of course, stashing away 15% of your income every year is easier said than done, right? Especially when you have debts, especially when you may not be budgeting, especially when you have high expenses, which is why in the financial action plan, I tell you to do things before you get to this point. But this is going to allow you to get to a place where you have enough retirement savings that you don't outlive them, right? The biggest issue with retirement savings is not that people get into retirement and they overspend. Of course, that can be done, right? People can get into retirement and get a little bit wild and crazy with the money that they have. But way more often do people get to retirement and not have enough money, right? So doing this first and foremost is the key, is the whole idea of having money when you retire. So at least 15% of your income, and this is not that difficult, right? It sounds like a lot, but if you are out of debt and you have an emergency fund, what else are you putting money towards, right? Of course, there are expenses for all these different types of things in your life, right? But I've talked about this before. The median household income in the United States is around $60,000 a year, right? So let's say you make $60,000 and let's say you invest 15% of that $60,000 a year. That's $9,000 a year or $750 a month, which sounds like a lot, but many of you are making car payments of $750 a month or more. Okay. Now let's just say that you never get a raise, which isn't likely, right? You never change the amount that you're investing. You never change anything, which is not likely, right? Your financial life gets no better. And you make $60,000 a year. And let's say you do this, let's just say from age 30 to age 60, right? I'll give you a 30-year period. And let's say you made 8% on your money. So if you made 8% on your money, you invested $750 per month for 30 years, right? And you would obviously start with nothing there. You would end up with $1.118 million just making 8%. Now, of course, making a higher rate of return, you'd have more money. Investing more, you'd have more money. Investing longer, you'd have more money, right? But the point here is that you can become a millionaire by simply doing this over a 30-year period and making a sub-market rate of return, right? So it can be done, but it is reliant on you following the first steps of the financial action plan to actually get there. Okay, so I digress from that, but that is extremely important if you want to get to the place where you can actually live on your retirement savings and that you're not just relying on Social Security or whatever else in your retirement years. Now, the second thing that I think you should do, and this is again before retirement, is invest your money in tax advantaged accounts. And we talk about this all the time. Now, rarely do I call them tax advantaged accounts. Sometimes I do, right? But I typically call them by their names. Right? I call them 401ks. I call them IRAs. I call them 403bs. I call them TSPs. I call them HSAs, right? And all of these are just different types of tax advantaged accounts. Now, for those of you who don't know, right, when you go and let's say you just open up an account with Robinhood or whatever, right, or any of these little apps that you can just open an account with and start investing, which is fine, but that shouldn't be the bulk of what you actually do. Those are just taxable brokerage accounts, meaning any of the realized gains within those accounts, meaning if you buy something at 100, it goes up to 120, you sell, so you realize a $20 gain, right? That $20 gain is going to be taxable to you, okay? But there are several types of accounts that do not have this taxation of the money that you put in. Not only do they not have that type of taxation of the gains, right? They can give you tax benefits for the money that you put in or tax benefits on the money that you ultimately take out if you follow the parameters. So just for instance, with IRAs, right? There are traditional and Roth IRAs. Traditional IRAs, you put in money and you get a tax deduction for the money that you put in. The money grows tax deferred, meaning that there are no taxes on the gains. You defer the taxes on the gains. And then when you take the money out after age 59 and a half, right? You pay income tax on all of the money that you take out. Okay. Now, any money that's still in there, it grows tax deferred still once you're in retirement, even though there are RMDs. But I'm not going to get into all that, right? But then there's Roth accounts where you put money in after taxes. It grows tax free. So again, no capital gains on the growth. But then later on, when you take money out, you take money out tax free. So in retirement, you pay no taxes on the money that you take out of that account, right? And either of those types of accounts, along with there's traditional and Roth 401ks, there's HSAs that are triple tax advantage. I'm not going to get into all these types of accounts because I've done individual videos on them all, right? But my point is that investing in these types of accounts will make it, specifically the Roth ones, right, will make it to where when you get to retirement, you're not likely to run out of money. Because let's think about Roth accounts. You get to retirement, let's say you've got $2 million in a Roth IRA. Guess how much money you can actually get your hands on? $2 million tax-free, no problem, okay? But let's say you've got $2 million in a traditional IRA and you try to take all of that out at once. That means it would all be taxable income to you, right? And after you pay state income tax and federal income tax, I mean, you're probably looking at just about half of that is going to be gone, right? So if you took that all out at once, which most people wouldn't do, but if you did, you'd be left with only about $1 million, right? But let's say you're taking off $100,000 a year, that $100,000 is going to be taxable from the traditional account, but it won't be from the Roth account. So that's why I like Roth accounts so much. And that's why when we invest in these accounts, they give us a better view of what we actually have in retirement. We're not likely to burn through it as quickly because every time that you take money out of a traditional account in retirement, then guess what? You're going to have to pay the taxes. So you'll actually net less than what you took out of the account. Now, of course, that's the case with the traditional accounts, but the traditional accounts are still more advantageous to us than are the taxable brokerage accounts. Why? Because the growth of those accounts over time will be taxed when the growth is realized. You'll have tax dividends. You will have to pay taxes on all the money that you take out. Now, it may be at capital gains tax rate, but still, right? You're not getting a deduction on the front end and you're having to pay taxes on realized gains. So overall, our tax advantaged accounts are going to be very, very useful for us and will allow us to be in a place where we have more money in retirement. Therefore, we're less likely to go through all of it. Then that's the second thing. Move to the third thing that you guys can do. Pay attention to how much of your paycheck is getting contributed to your 401k, your IRA, whatever, right? This just means don't be asleep at the wheel. I know I said earlier, 15% of your income, of course, right? But pay attention, right? Pay attention to the amount of money that's coming out, right? You may be automatically enrolled in your 401k and you don't know how much money is going into it. You need to really pay attention. And that's where a lot of the being asleep at the wheel can be, is with your 401k, because most people nowadays don't see a pay stub. You don't see the exact amount that's coming out. Maybe you pick some arbitrary percentage, right? But if you don't know what percentage of your income's coming out, what dollar amount's coming out, then you need to figure that out. And all of this just comes down to being aware, right? And when we're aware of what's going on in our financial life, then we can really make good plans to get to retirement and to live through retirement in a sustainable way. But just pay attention to the money that you're putting in. Make sure that you're not going over contribution limits. Make sure that your income is not over income limits. Make sure you're following all of the rules, because all of the tax advantaged accounts do have rules. And the worst thing that we can do is to make mistakes and then ultimately have to pay penalties or pay taxes where they should not have been due in the first place. So don't fall asleep at the wheel. Pay attention to where your money's going. Pay attention to your automatic deductions out of your paycheck, all those types of things. Pay attention to your HSA. Make sure you can invest it. Invest money in the HSA, all these types of things, right? So that's the third thing I think you should do. Fourth, build a cash reserve. Now, I know this comes before investing in the financial action plan, right? But when we're talking about saving for retirement, investing for retirement, obviously that's going to make sure that we don't outlive our retirement savings, because that's actually going to be our retirement savings, right? But the importance of building up a cash reserve cannot be understated, right? Of course you need to invest. Of course you need to grow your money, but emergency expenses may pop up along the road on your way to retirement. Actually, I'll just, change that. Emergency expenses will pop up on the way, right? And you need to make sure that you have the money to solve those problems when those problems arise. Now, you're not going to be able to self-insure away every emergency, nor should you try, because that would be an outrageous amount of money to try to put away and to not have growing for you, right? But you should have a reasonable amount, what I say, 4 to 6 months of household expenses, so that if you or your spouse loses a job, there's a medical expense that comes up, something, right? Something big happens in your life that you need cash for now, then you can take care of that thing, that it's a need and you need to take care of it immediately, then you can have the money in order to do so. If you don't have that, then what are we going to have to do, right? Well, there are multiple things, but one thing that you may do is stop your retirement savings. And if we stop our retirement savings for some period of time, we'll have less money in retirement, which makes it to where we're more likely to outlive our retirement savings, right? Something we may also do is go into debt, right? And if we go into debt, then we're going to have to pay off that debt. And if we don't have enough money after investing 15% of our income to pay off our debt, then guess what? We're not going to be investing 15% of our income, because we have to pay the people that we owe for our debts, right? So you see where I'm going with this. All of this trickles down to you won't be able to have the retirement savings that you thought you would, okay? Which is a problem. Therefore, we must have a cash reserve. We must have that emergency fund built up properly. It will keep you from all of the things in your financial life that are just nagging, right? The times when you start the car and you need a new battery, the times when you're driving down the road and you have a flat tire, the times when, I know these are car related things, but car related things are very expensive, and a lot of people can relate to something going wrong with their car. The whole thing on social media where they say, just when you feel like you're getting a little bit of money, your check engine light comes on, and it's kind of how it feels sometimes. But if you have a cash reserve, you have an emergency fund, then you will be able to get to a point where it's not that big a worry. Yes, it always stinks. It always stinks to have to pay for something that you didn't expect to have to pay for, and especially if it's expensive, yes, it stinks, right? But if you can get past that and just say, hey, well, at least I had the money. I didn't have to go into debt. I didn't have to stop investing for retirement. All I have to do is replenish this cash reserve, right? You're repaying yourself, right? You're not repaying a debt. You're not having to stop anything else you're doing in your financial life for any extended period of time. So make sure that you build up a cash reserve that will help you to get to where you want to get with your retirement savings. So that's the fourth thing. Then the fifth thing that you can do, right, is very important, right? Very, very big thing. And it's going to take time, and it's going to take a little bit of math. It might take some Excel, right? It might take some budgeting. It's definitely going to take some budgeting. But what it is figure out how much money you'll need in retirement. And this is hard. And the further away you are from retirement, the more difficult it is, okay? It's difficult to know how much money you'll be making then, what type of lifestyle you'll have then, where you'll be living then, what you'll need to be taking care of financially at that point, right? So early on in your financial life, you just need to do some basic math, right? And what that basic math, in my mind, looks like this, right? It looks like take whatever income you expect to make reasonably within your financial life, right? Look at what percentage of your income you spend currently. Say you're spending that percentage of your income then, and then just grow things by inflation throughout your retirement life. And that can kind of tell you what you are going to need. Now, that's just a rough estimate. That gives you a rough idea of how much you'll need in retirement, right? But the closer you get to retirement, the more specific you can get. Right? The more specific you can get with the specific costs that you may incur. Now, we have to remember that retirement is not going to look the same as our working life. And as you age, your needs will also change, right? You may be at a point where you have kids and you're buying groceries for a family of 5, or you're buying groceries for a family of 7, whatever it may be, right? But one day your kids are going to be gone, and it may just be you and your spouse, right? And you're not buying as much in groceries anymore, but now, you have more health issues and you have to pay for things health-wise that you didn't have to before. Or maybe now you have a big mortgage payment, but later on you won't have a mortgage payment. So you have more money freed up for other things, right? So understanding what that's going to look like is a lot easier the closer you get to retirement. But the things that you need to take into account in determining how much you'll need is going to the Social Security website and getting the calculation for your benefits, which again is going to be far easier the closer you are to retirement, right? You're going to need to, kind of get an idea of what healthcare costs look like, do just some, analyses based on what inflation is over time and how your expenses are likely to grow when you have, a nest egg that is not fixed, right? Of course, your nest egg grows, but it has to beat inflation in order to create the amount of income that you're going to need it to create, right? So you really need to take all this into account and then make sure that the withdrawal rate that you're expecting, maybe it's the 4% rule, maybe it's more, maybe it's less, will cover whatever you need it to cover. And then if it will, then keep doing what you're doing and keep growing your money in the way that you're growing it. If it won't, then maybe you need to pick up your retirement savings, right? Maybe you need to pick up the type of investing that you do over the long term. But this is so vital. Now, you really need to take into account everything you can reasonably take into account. Now, as a 26-year-old myself, right, I'm very far from retirement. I'm very far from that point where I'm actually going to need money in retirement. But I have a general idea of the amount of money that I think will take care of me and my wife in a reasonable way once we get to retirement. And we're kind of pushing towards that number. Will that number change over time? Likely, right? Hopefully, though, we invest enough, we have enough money put away growing for us that we far exceed that number, and you don't have to worry about this part of the story as much, right? And that's one big thing, right? Figuring out how much you'll need in retirement is huge, right? But if you just far out save it and far out invest it, then it doesn't matter as much, right? So we go back to why I say the first thing that we need to make sure is locked down if we're not going to outlive our retirement savings is that we are saving at least 15% of our income for our future. Because if you're doing that, then you're far more likely to not need to just stress over how much money you'll need in retirement, even though we do need to budget, we do need to plan in that way. But you'll be far more set up than you ever could have hoped. So hopefully that resonates with you guys. But that is the fifth thing. The sixth thing that you can do before retirement is consider staying in the workforce. All right. Now, I am not suggesting that everybody keep working. Okay. I am just suggesting that if you have this fixed time in your head that you're going to retire at this age, or you're going to retire this year, and you won't care, that's just when you're going to retire, consider staying in the workforce if your retirement plan does not have it set up to the point where that's going to be reasonable for you to retire, that you're not going to have your needs covered by your nest egg or whatever, right? Consider staying in the workforce a little longer. It may help you to get higher Social Security benefits. It's going to help your money to grow longer, to build up. It's going to help you to save more in order to get to your retirement goals. But ultimately, I want you to retire as early as you want to, right? But if your retirement accounts don't say that you can, if your nest egg, your Social Security don't say that you can, then you are going to have to stay in the workforce. And especially if you have a job that is not difficult and maybe gives you a lot of flexibility, you work from home, you do all these, why, right? Why would you not keep taking the easy check? And I think that's the idea a lot of people have, and it is a good idea in many cases. Now, once you're near retirement or you're first in retirement, right, there are also some things that you can do. Those are things that you need to do before retirement to make sure that you don't outlive your retirement savings. But there's a couple things you need to do as you enter or right before you enter, right? The first is you need to use some withdrawal rate as an estimate to how much money you can comfortably withdraw each year, right? And many people talk about the 4% rule. I think that's a good place to start. But that doesn't mean you're going to be pulling 4% off of your investments every single year, but that's a reasonable amount of money to suggest that you make every year in retirement, right? So use that 4% rule, estimate how much money you can comfortably withdraw each year, right? And then see how that feels to you, see how that feels to your current financial situation as you are very close to retirement, right? This is something you need to do before you actually enter into retirement, right? The 4% rule is devised to figure out the largest percentage of your investments you can take out in the first year of retirement and still be highly confident that you don't run out of money, because everybody's worst fear is taking out too much early on, the market dropping, and you still having to play catch up over a long period of time, or your money depleting over some period of time, which is what nobody wants. So just take that into account, and 4% should beat inflation on a long-term basis. I know it may not be beating it right now, but on a long-term basis, it should beat inflation. But again, that doesn't have to be your withdrawal rate. It just may be a good estimate to start with. And then the eighth thing, and I would suggest doing this as you get closer to retirement and as you enter and work through retirement, is work with somebody else. Work with a financial advisor, a financial planner, to feel more confident in your spending plan for retirement, because they work with people every day trying to do this, right? They have good ideas as to what's going to work and what's not, right? And sometimes going at it alone is just not the best idea. And this is something that I even have to think about over a long period of time, because I do have a lot of knowledge about financial things. I try to impart that knowledge to you guys on a regular basis. But conceding to the fact that I may eventually need somebody to walk beside me and my wife to make sure that things work out well over a long period of time is a hard pill to swallow. But for the vast majority of you, it's going to add value as you're in retirement. It's going to add value as you're very close to retirement. And it's going to be an objective voice that tells you what can and cannot be done, or what should or should not be done. And they can also provide you a lot of clarity and take away some of your stress and anxiety that you may have about your retirement life, right? So ultimately, having somebody to walk with you, I think, can be an absolutely huge thing and can help you get through retirement, right? So those are 8 big things, some of them before retirement, some of them as you enter and as you go through, right? But I don't want any of you to outlive your money. I don't want you to have too much month at the end of the money. I want you to have too much money at the end of the month. I want you to be able to be generous. I want you to be able to spend money the way that you want to in retirement. And I want you to be able to choose when you want to retire. I don't want you to have to work into oblivion. I know some of you are going to start late, and that's going to push back your ability to retire at the time that you want to. But you know what? Put your head down, put a plan in place, and get to work, right? Some of you are going to do all the right things, and you're going to be looking up at 50 going, hey, I'm kind of set, right? Like, when do I want to retire? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? But have a clear vision, plan over a long period of time, and do these things, follow these things. If everybody follows these things that I've talked about in today's episode, then you're going to be far more likely to be successful in your ability to live on your retirement savings and to ultimately never outlive your retirement savings. I'm going to do them. I hope you do them as well. Again, this is not theoretical. These are actionable items, and wherever you may be in these actionable items, then just jump right in, right? You may be saving 15% of your income. You may be investing in tax advantage accounts. You may know how much money you're putting away. You may have a cash reserve. You may know how much money you'll need in retirement, right? Or maybe you're falling short in any of those places. You can start to pick those up. That's why I put out the financial action plan for you guys. It gives you a step-by-step look into what we're doing here. And then Some of these things are just a little more specific to retirement. And I have other episodes on things like withdrawal rates, the 4% rule, all those things. So you can go check those out later. But I want you to be able to leave something behind when you're gone and not spend down the last penny while you're in retirement. I want you to retire with a lot of financial freedom and a lot of options ahead of you. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video. Leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in tomorrow as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think can be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.